You're standing in the aisle of a big box store, ready to start your next awesome project. You hunt through the pile, looking for the straightest, cleanest boards you can find. You pick the perfect ones, pay for them, and bring them home, thinking you're ready to build. But here's a surprising fact that can save you a ton of heartache later. Those beautiful straight boards are often hiding a secret. They're still too wet on the inside. It's one of the most common traps for new woodworkers, and it can turn a project you're proud of into a warped, cracked mess. It's not your fault. It's just the reality of how most commercial lumber is processed and sold today. This isn't just a small problem, it's a big deal. When you buy a board labeled kiln-dried, you assume it's ready to use. But if you were to test that same board with a simple tool called a moisture meter, you'd often see a number that's way too high for building furniture. The label might promise dryness, but the meter reveals the truth. I've seen boards straight from the store shelf that read 12%, 15%, or even higher. For indoor projects that need to stay flat and stable, like a tabletop or a cabinet door, that much moisture is a ticking time bomb. It's the hidden flaw that can sabotage your hard work before you even make the first cut. So what happens when you build with wood that's still too wet? Imagine building a beautiful dining table. You spend hours cutting, joining, and sanding everything to perfection. It looks fantastic. But over the next few weeks and months, as that hidden moisture slowly escapes into the drier air of your home, the wood begins to move. The tabletop that was once perfectly flat starts to cup and warp. The joints you so carefully glued together start to pull apart, creating gaps. A hairline crack might appear right down the middle of a board. All your hard work starts to unravel, simply because the wood wasn't stable enough to begin with. The reason this happens so often comes down to speed and money. In today's fast-paced market, the pressure is on to get lumber from the forest to the store as quickly as possible. Proper drying takes time, and time is money. To speed things up, mills often run their kilns hot and fast. This process can dry the outer shell of the board, making it feel dry to the touch, but it often leaves a core of trapped moisture deep inside. This is especially true for thicker boards. So while the board looks and feels ready on the shelf, it's still holding on to a significant amount of water that will inevitably cause problems down the road. To understand why wet wood is such a problem, you need to know a little bit about how wood behaves. Think of a piece of wood as a tight bundle of tiny straws. When the tree is alive, these straws are full of water. After the tree is cut down, that water starts to evaporate and the wood begins to shrink. This process isn't always even. Wood shrinks more across its width than it does along its length. This is why a wet board will get narrower as it dries but stay roughly the same length. This movement is a natural, powerful force you can't stop, which is why we need to manage it. Your home's environment plays a huge role in this. The air inside a modern house with heating and air conditioning is usually very dry. When you bring a piece of lumber with a high moisture content into this dry environment, the wood will immediately try to find a balance. It will start releasing its excess moisture into the air to match its surroundings. This process is called reaching equilibrium moisture content, or EMC. As the wood releases water, it shrinks and changes shape. This is the movement that causes all those problems like warping, cupping, and cracking in your finished projects. The wood is just trying to get comfortable in its new home. As I mentioned, the kiln drying process at commercial mills is often rushed. The intense heat on the outside of the boards creates a hard, dry shell. This is called case hardening. It can trick you into thinking the entire board is dry, but that hardened shell can also trap moisture in the center of the wood. So, you bring the board home, cut into it, and release the tension. Suddenly, the wetter core is exposed to the air. The two parts of the board, the dry shell and the wet core, will now dry and shrink at different rates, causing the board to twist and warp, sometimes overnight. This leads to very specific and heartbreaking project failures. A cutting board made from wet wood might split in half after a few weeks in a dry kitchen. The drawers on a dresser you built might swell and become impossible to open and close. The panel in a cabinet door can shrink so much that it pulls out of the frame, leaving an ugly gap or even cracking the wood. These aren't signs that you're a bad woodworker. They are often just the predictable result of building with wood that wasn't given enough time to acclimate and stabilize before the project began. Understanding this is the first step to preventing it. So, how do you fight back against wet wood? You need a secret weapon, a moisture meter. This simple tool is one of the best investments a woodworker can make. There are two main types. Pin-style meters have two small metal prongs that you press into the wood. They measure the electrical resistance between the pins to calculate the moisture content. Pinless meters, on the other hand, use an electromagnetic sensor that you just lay on the surface of the wood. They are great for quickly scanning a lot of boards without leaving little pinholes. For the most accurate reading on thick stock, a pin-style meter is usually better because it can measure deeper inside the board. Using a meter is easy. When you're at the store, you can try to pick boards that feel lighter and ring a bit when you tap them, as these are often drier. But the real test happens at home. For a pin-style meter, push the pins about a quarter of the way into the board's thickness. For a pinless meter, set it for the correct wood species and lay it flat on the board. Test a few spots along the length and on both faces. For indoor furniture in a typical climate-controlled house, you are aiming for a moisture content between 6% and 8%. Anything much higher than that needs more time to dry before you can use it for fine woodworking. Once you get your lumber home and discover it's too wet, don't worry, you can easily finish the drying process yourself. The key is to stack the wood properly to allow for good airflow. This is called stickering. Lay down a few evenly spaced strips of wood on a flat surface. Place your first layer of boards on top of these strips. Then, place more strips, the stickers, directly on top of the boards, aligned with the strips below. Add your next layer of boards, and repeat. The stickers create an air gap between each board, allowing air to circulate freely around all 6 sides of every piece. To speed up the drying process safely, you can create a better drying environment. You don't need a fancy kiln. Just stack the wood in a room inside your house, like a basement or a spare room, where the climate is stable. You can place a small fan nearby to keep the air moving gently across the stack. A dehumidifier running in the same room can also work wonders, as it will pull moisture out of the air, which in turn encourages the wood to release its moisture more quickly. This simple setup helps the wood reach its equilibrium moisture content with your home's environment much faster than just leaving it in a pile. Getting your wood ready for a project doesn't have to be complicated. By following a few simple steps, you can ensure your lumber is stable and ready to be turned into something that will last for generations. It all starts with a little patience and preparation. Think of this as the most important part of your project because everything else you do depends on it. A solid foundation begins with solid, stable wood. Here's a quick checklist to help you get it right every time, so your projects stay strong and beautiful for years to come. First, buy your wood ahead of time. This is the simplest and most effective tip. Don't buy wood on Saturday morning for a project you plan to start that afternoon. Instead, try to purchase your lumber at least a few weeks before you plan to use it. This gives you a buffer to let the wood acclimate to your shop's environment. As soon as you get it home, sticker the stack properly in a dry, stable area with good airflow. This allows the wood to settle down, release any internal stress, and reach a stable moisture content that matches its future home. This single habit will solve most wood movement problems. Next, measure, don't guess. Use your moisture meter to check the boards every week or so. You'll see the numbers slowly drop. Once the readings have stabilized, meaning they don't change for several days in a row, and are within that sweet spot of 6 to 8%, your wood is ready. When you're ready to start milling, do it in stages. If you need to take a thick board down to a final thickness, don't do it all at once. Plane a little off each side, then let the board rest for a day. This gives any newly exposed, wetter wood a chance to dry and release tension, preventing it from warping after you've cut it to final size. Finally, here is your simple checklist for success. 1. Buy wood in advance. 2. Sticker and stack it immediately with good airflow. 3. Use a moisture meter to confirm it's stable, 6 to 8% for indoors. 4. Mill your wood in stages, letting it rest between steps. By following these easy guidelines, you're no longer just hoping your project turns out well, you're ensuring it will. A little extra care and patience at the beginning is a small price to pay for the satisfaction of building something beautiful and durable. You'll be creating projects that become family heirlooms, not firewood, and that's what this craft is all about.